Jasmine Crockett didn't raise her voice. She didn't point fingers. But one question, asked live on air, had Melania Trump and the entire White House scrambling within hours. The red light blinked on. Millions tuned in for their usual morning fix of Capitol Circuit Live. The panel? Routine, 2 media analysts, a former GOP strategist, and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. The topic? Campaign finance reform. Safe. Predictable. Until it wasn't. Host Bryant Keegan opened with his signature polish, "Good morning, America." A lot on the table today, campaign dollars, ethical overreach, but his voice wavered when he glanced at Jasmine. She sat at the edge of the panel, calm, composed. A dark gray suit, no flashy pins, no TV makeup, just presence. She didn't plan to make headlines. But she looked like someone ready if the moment called. Bryant led with a soft pitch about a string of private fundraisers at Mar-a-Lago. Fair concern or political fishing, he asked. The Republican strategist chuckled. These things happen every cycle. The media panelists gave their usual sound bites. Optics, partisanship, more of the same. Then, Congresswoman Crockett? Bryant turned to her. Your thoughts? She took a breath, then calmly replied, I think we've all seen enough cocktail hours to know when something smells off. This isn't about who showed up. It's about who benefited, and who wasn't supposed to be in that room. You could feel the shift. Subtle, but sharp. I've received credible information about one of these events, she continued. This wasn't just handshakes and champagne. Foreign business figures were present, individuals barred under federal law from participating in U.S. fundraising. The studio tensed. No panic. Just realization. I'm not speculating, she added, her tone firmer. I have dates. Names. Emails, conversations about donations, before, during, and after the event. Bryant looked shaken. Are you saying someone in the administration knew about this? I'm saying a high-ranking official was there. At the head table. And they didn't ask questions. When Alice Banner tried to interrupt, Jasmine barely turned. Let me finish, she said. Quiet. Absolute, she glanced directly into the camera. If public servants want to preach patriotism, the bare minimum is protecting our elections from foreign influence. Otherwise, what are we even doing here? Silence. Bryant stumbled toward a break, but it didn't matter. The spark was lit. Online, the clip exploded. TikTok flooded with her one-liners. A still of Alice blinking mid-shock went viral. Hashtag head table was trending within the hour. Back in the studio, Jasmine hadn't moved. Hands folded, unbothered. Bryant tried to reset. Just to clarify, are you accusing the First Lady of wrongdoing? Jasmine looked him dead in the eye. I'm raising a question the public deserves to ask. The strategist snapped, if you're not accusing Melania Trump, why even mention her? She brought herself up, Jasmine replied. No one forced her to sit in that room, surrounded by foreign billionaires, while envelopes were being passed. Elise Banner scoffed. Come on, Jasmine. She's the First Lady. Attending fundraisers isn't a crime. No, Jasmine nodded. It's not. But it's not neutral either. Presence is power, especially when the room itself isn't legal. Then came the moment. Jasmine reached into her bag, pulled out a slim folder. Since we're live, she said, and since I know people will question my motives, I brought this. Elise's smile vanished. Jasmine opened the folder. These are emails between a White House advisor and a foreign national on a sanctions list. They discussed donation caps, and how to bypass them. She handed it to Bryant. He blinked. He hadn't expected anything physical. Receipts weren't supposed to be real, we can't verify that live, Cole protested. I agree, Jasmine said, staring him down. Which is why I've already submitted it to the ethics committee. I'm not here to grandstand. I'm here because I'm tired of this system treating truth like it's fragile. You're accusing the administration of election interference? Alice said flatly. No, Jasmine replied. I'm accusing the people who protect silence. If you're more upset at the person pointing out smoke than the people lighting matches, you're not actually mad about fire. Behind the glass. A producer waved frantically, but Bryant didn't cut away. He just sat there, stunned, like the rest of the country. Bryant finally asked. Why bring this up today, and like this? Jasmine didn't flinch. Because I was warned not to, she said plainly. Someone tried to pressure my office last week, told me I'd be making enemies I couldn't even see coming. Elise narrowed her eyes. Are you saying the White House tried to intimidate you? I'm saying, Jasmine replied, that fear has never served this country well. And I didn't run for office to stay quiet. There it was. Not drama. Not theater. Just a woman with a folder full of facts, looking America in the eye, and refusing to blink. Bryant glanced at the camera. Well, this conversation just took a turn. Jasmine smiled, not smugly, but like someone who expected resistance and came prepared, but the real storm wasn't inside the studio. It was everywhere else. Within minutes, every newsroom in the country was on alert. Clips of Jasmine sliding the folder across the table were already spliced, subtitled, and uploaded. Even Facebook groups that normally stuck to casserole recipes were posting screenshots of email headers from her documents. Viewers didn't just watch, they rewound, paused, zoomed in and back in the studio, tension thickened. Cameras cut to commercial. But nobody relaxed. Bryant whispered urgently into his earpiece. Elise paced. Cole texted at frantic speed. And Jasmine? She sipped water. Calm. Unshaken. When the show returned, Bryant tried to ease the tension. Well folks, that was unexpected. Congresswoman Crockett certainly brought receipts this morning. I didn't bring them for show, Jasmine said coolly. I brought them because people like pretending there's nothing behind the curtain until someone pulls it back. Bryant cleared his throat. Let's talk specifics. These documents, have they been authenticated? Yes, she said. Verified by 3 independent sources, each with ties to federal compliance agencies. And no, I won't name them. I'm not putting anyone at risk so someone else can spin accountability into politics. Elise folded her arms. But if the First Lady's name isn't in those emails, why even mention her? Jasmine turned to her. Ever seen a silent witness in court? No lies. No words. Just presence. You can argue it means nothing, or you can ask why someone with that much influence sat quietly in a room where foreign money was being moved around. Cole cut in. Do you have actual evidence Melania Trump did anything wrong? I have evidence she was there, Jasmine answered without blinking. Photos. Time-stamped. Testimony from someone in the room. She was seated next to 2 guests whose donations violate FEC rules. That's not guilt by association. That's proximity to power used, whether intentionally or not, to validate a setting that never should have existed. Bryant tried to redirect. Some say this kind of accusation tears the country further apart. And silence doesn't? Jasmine shot back. If this is what divides us, then maybe we weren't united to begin with. There was something deeply human in her voice. No anger. No theatrics. Just a quiet exhaustion, the kind that comes after watching the rules bend until they break. Then came the curveball. A breaking news banner crawled across the screen. White House responds to Representative Crockett. Baseless and malicious. Everyone froze. Bryant read it live. Looks like the White House is taking this seriously. We're being told a formal statement is coming, and possible legal action. Against me? Jasmine asked, with a calm shrug. Let them. If they want to sue me for telling the truth, I'll represent myself with the very folder there. Trying to bury. Elise jumped in, sharper now. You're playing a dangerous game. Then maybe, Jasmine said, leaning forward, they shouldn't have invited foreign money into it. The room shifted. It wasn't just political anymore. It was personal. Jasmine wasn't there for applause, she was pulling the thread, daring the whole thing to unravel in front of everyone. Outside the studio, the West Wing was on fire. Phones lit up. Lawyers were yanked out of lunch meetings. Press secretary Eva Germain was already drafting a statement, while texting her own legal counsel. Inside, Jasmine sat back, crossed her legs, adjusted her mic. Ready for round 2. Because this wasn't just her fight anymore. It was war. The next half hour felt like a courtroom with no judge, no jury, just Jasmine and a panel trying not to look rattled. Bryant tried to regain control. Congresswoman, reports say the White House is preparing a full legal review. Are you ready for that? I am, she said without hesitation. What I said is true. What I brought is real. And no amount of pushback changes that. Elise leaned in. Let me ask. The obvious, are you accusing the First Lady of knowingly participating in an illegal fundraiser? No, Jasmine replied. Calm. Unmoving, cold-pressed, then what are you saying? I'm saying she was there, Jasmine said. At a private table at Mar-a-Lago, during an event attended by at least 4 foreign nationals, 2 of whom have a known history of illegal political contributions in other countries. She was seen speaking with one, smiling in a photo with another. And that makes her guilty? Elise asked, incredulous. It makes her part of the picture. Jasmine answered. When someone who symbolizes the country sits in a room like that, it sends a message. Whether she meant to or not, she validated it. Bryant looked over, shoulders tight with tension. Do you have that photo? Jasmine paused, then reached into her folder. I do. But I'm not showing it here. Bryant blinked. Why not? Because I'm not here to humiliate anyone, Jasmine said. I'm not trying to go viral. This isn't about a photo, it's about a pattern. How power gets abused. How people pretend to be guests when they're really centerpieces. She let that linger. Then added, if the committee believes the photo has public value, I'll submit it to them. Let them release it, Jasmine said, her voice calm but unshakable. I didn't come here to throw gasoline on a fire. I came here to point out there's smoke in the room, and everyone's pretending they don't smell it. That line landed like thunder. It was clipped, posted, shared, before the segment had even ended. But it wasn't the heat that caught the public's attention. It was her restraint, deliberate, steady, unflinching. She wasn't being baited. She wasn't unraveling. She was controlled. Measured. Unshakable. Elise leaned forward, eyes narrowed. You're implying without accusing. That's political cowardice. Jasmine looked her directly in the eye. No. That's legal precision. I'm not here to speculate, I'm here to report what I know. It's up to the media, the watchdogs, the voters to decide what it means. I've done my part. Then. Her voice softened, almost painfully sincere. I hope the First Lady didn't know what was happening in that room. I really do. But even if she didn't, silence can still cause harm. It wasn't venom, it was responsibility. A blend of disappointment and resolve that cut deeper than outrage ever could. Bryant tried to close the segment. We'll continue to follow this developing story. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, thank you for your time. Jasmine stood, mic still clipped to her blazer. You're welcome, she said. And for the record, I didn't plan to talk about this today. But after what I've seen behind closed doors this month, I couldn't keep pretending it didn't matter. She unclipped her mic, handed it to a producer, and walked off set before anyone else could speak, but just because she left the studio, didn't mean the story was over. It was just getting started. By the time her black SUV pulled away from the side entrance, reporters were already swarming the curb, shouting questions. Inside the car, her assistant Khalees juggled 2 phones, press on one, legal on the other. They've issued a denial, Khalees said without looking up. The First Lady's office claims you fabricated the setting. Says she was never present at any donor event involving foreign nationals. They're threatening legal action, demanding a retraction. Jasmine looked out the window as D.C. blurred by. Did they say which part one lied about? No. Just labeled it all false and malicious. Jasmine sighed. That means they know it's true. Khalees looked up, tense. This could get ugly, Jazz. You need to be ready for the full machine. I am ready, Jasmine replied. That's why I brought the file. That's why I went public. And she meant it. Across town in the East Wing, Melania Trump was pacing her office, fists clenched. Her personal aide, Clarissa Darnell, stood by quietly, file folder clutched in both hands. She made me a target, Melania said sharply, her accent thicker with anger. I was a guest. I didn't organize anything. Why would she say that? Clarissa didn't answer. It wasn't really a question, and Melania sat hard on the edge of her desk, grabbed her phone, and began typing an Instagram post. A polished photo from a charity gala, captioned, I have always held myself to the highest ethical standards. Attempts to drag my name into partisan attacks will fail. Truth will prevail. It was clean. Cold. Controlled. But the internet didn't wait for the truth. Clips of Jasmine's words had already gone viral. Hashtags like hashtag truth over titles and hashtag receipt queen were trending. The photo evidence Jasmine referenced hadn't even surfaced, but her calm, clear tone had already won over much of the public. That same afternoon, 3 political watchdog groups, 1 conservative, 2 centrist, filed a formal inquiry with the Federal Election Commission. Even Fox River News, usually hostile toward Crockett, ran the headline, Did the First Lady sit in on an illegal donor meeting? What we know so far. Melania's team called it character assassination. Jasmine called it accountability. Back in her congressional office, Jasmine walked through a war zone of ringing phones and overloaded inboxes. She closed her office door, exhaled, and dialed one number. Rashida, she said when the voice answered. I need you to back me up when this hits committee. They're gonna try to flip it. Representative Rashida Corey didn't hesitate. I already saw the clip. You didn't blink, Jazz. I've got your back. Let them come. For the first time that day, Jasmine allowed herself a small breath of peace. She looked out the window. Across the street, people were already gathering, signs in hand, cameras setting up on Capitol steps. Then, her phone rang again. Unlisted number, she answered. Hello? Silence. Then, a low, clipped male voice, You're in way over your head. Click, she stared at the screen. Pulse steady, but rising. She didn't call Khalees. She didn't report the number, she simply set the phone down. And Saturday, because now she understood, this wasn't about a fundraiser anymore. It was about power. Perception. And who gets to control the narrative. But Jasmine hadn't come this far to back down just because someone was finally scared. Inside the West Wing, chaos brewed beneath the surface. No alarms. No shouting. Just urgency, every aide darting through narrow halls, eyes down, files clutched tight, and in her private office, Melania Trump stood rigid by the window. Voice low. Cold, I want this buried, she said. Every outlet that played that clip, held accountable. And I want her censured immediately. Clarissa shifted uncomfortably. The lawyers think it's risky. She has documents. If we push too hard, it might validate the story. Melania didn't blink. Then find another way. Melania turned slowly, arms crossed. So we're just going to let a congresswoman humiliate me on live television and say nothing? No, ma'am, Clarissa replied. We're crafting a broader response, one that keeps your name clean. Without feeding the fire. Melania's eyes narrowed. No one told her to say my name. But she did. Clarissa hesitated. Technically, she didn't. She never actually said your name. Melania paused. The silence between them was brittle. She didn't have to, she said at last. Everyone knew who she meant. And that makes it worse. 2 floors down, the president's chief of staff, Brantley Cross, was already in crisis mode. He dropped a thick binder onto the press secretary's desk. Why didn't we get ahead of this? He snapped. Why wasn't there a preemptive statement? Anything? We didn't think she'd go public, said Ava Germain, voice tight. But calm. This was supposed to stay quiet, whispers. No cameras. No folders. She's a freshman congresswoman, Brantley said. And she just made the First Lady look complicit in an international finance scandal. That's not whispers. That's dynamite. Ava didn't argue. She opened her laptop and pulled up Jasmine's segment. I've watched it 4 times. She said. She never directly accuses Melania of anything. She was surgical. Too careful. We can't sue her for defamation unless we can prove intent. Then spin it, Brantley snapped. Make it look like a political stunt. Paint her as an opportunist. We cannot let this narrative harden. Ava nodded. I'll draft something neutral by 6. Dismissive, but not panicked. Brantley was already pacing again. The First Lady wants blood. She's meeting with her own lawyers tonight. Private counsel. She's not waiting on us. Then convince her to wait, Ava said sharply. Because if she sues and Jasmine counters with more evidence, don't say it. Brantley cut her off. I know. Meanwhile, in a quiet Maryland neighborhood, Jasmine Crockett sat in her living room with Khalees, a manila envelope open between them. You really think they'll file? Khalees asked. They might, Jasmine replied. But they won't win. They'd have to prove malice, and I haven't even scratched the surface. She flipped a few more pages. In the corner of one, April 12th, Mar-a-Lago guest log, unofficial. I kept everything, she said. Every photo. Every message. Every warning telling me not to go public. They won't stop, Khalees muttered. They never do, Jasmine said. But neither will I. At that same hour, inside a gated mansion just outside Georgetown, Melania Trump sat stiffly across from her personal attorney, Carmen Varelli, a corporate trial specialist. Carmen scanned the early draft of the lawsuit. In silence before speaking, you need to think carefully, she said. She hasn't defamed you directly. She's raising implications, not accusations. If you file, discovery opens. That means your private communications become fair game. Melania's lips tightened. You think I'm hiding something? I think the public doesn't care about the truth as much as they care about the fight, Carmen said. And right. Now. She's winning that fight. Melania said nothing. Carmen continued, you can escalate, or disappear for a while and let this cool off. That second option lingered like a bad taste. Melania had never disappeared for anyone. And she wasn't about to start now. The next morning, Jasmine Crockett was up by 5:30. No phone, no email, just black coffee and a chair near the kitchen window, where the sun came in soft. For 5 minutes, she let herself breathe, then came the knock. Khalees stepped in, holding a fresh stack of media coverage. They're calling you reckless on 2 networks, she said. One anchor labeled it a stunt. The rest are framing it as bold, but divisive. Jasmine nodded. Expected. There's pressure from your own party too, Khalees added. Quiet, but it's there. Some want you to walk it back. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. Walk back what? The truth? Khalees didn't answer. She simply slid a new folder across the table. Calls. You need to return, reporters, party leadership, 2 oversight committee members. And 1 loud voicemail from Congressman Reese. Jasmine flipped through the list, then looked up. I told the truth, she said. And I'm not changing the story just because it's inconvenient. On Capitol Hill, Congressman Troy Reese was pacing outside his office, waving his arms at a flustered aide. She's messing up the strategy. He barked. We're supposed to be pushing healthcare reform this month, not swinging at the First Lady. She didn't swing, the aide replied. She pointed. Reese stopped. Same thing. Optics are optics. Back at Jasmine's district office, her staff was already huddled around a dry erase board covered in bullet points and polling data. Approvals up among independents, one aide said, but shaky among Dem leadership. Jasmine walked in, didn't sit, didn't hesitate. She motioned to the board, take that down. An intern looked confused. You don't want to shape the narrative? I already gave the narrative, Jasmine said. On national television. We're not spinning this. We're not walking it back. We're not clarifying what's already clear. That afternoon, she stood outside her district office in Arlington, no podium, no teleprompter. Just a few local reporters leaning in to hear her speak. I want to make one thing absolutely clear, she said. I did not accuse anyone of criminal behavior. I asked why a highly influential public figure was present at a private event. That raises serious ethical questions. That's not slander. That's oversight. A reporter raised a hand. The First Lady's office says you're manufacturing controversy for attention. Jasmine tilted her head slightly. If attention comes from asking the right questions, she said, then I think we've got bigger problems than me. A reporter called out, are you concerned about legal retaliation? Jasmine didn't flinch. No, she replied, steady and clear. Because the law is on my side, and so is the evidence. Another voice followed quickly, do you think the First Lady should resign from any public roles while this is being investigated? Jasmine took a breath. I think anyone tied to questionable political money should step back until we get clear answers. That's not about Melania Trump. That's about principle. Later that evening, her appearance on The Cole Drayman Show, a center-right program known for pressing hard, marked a critical moment. Cole, fast-talking and rarely subtle, didn't hold back. Congresswoman Crockett, what you did yesterday was bold. Some say reckless. Why now? Jasmine leaned back in her chair, calm. Because silence never protected anyone, she said. It only delays the truth. I've spent years in this town watching people whisper about things they should be shouting. I didn't run for Congress to whisper. Cole pressed further. Some think this could hurt your future here. She smiled, not smug, just certain. Maybe. But if staying in office means keeping quiet about what threatens the public's trust, then maybe I don't belong here. The studio didn't erupt in cheers. It didn't need to. There was a pause, a kind of stillness, the kind that means people are really listening. By midweek, something unexpected happened. The story hadn't faded. It had grown, but not in the chaotic, scandal spiral way pundits predicted. Jasmine Crockett wasn't everywhere. She wasn't flinging accusations or chasing cameras. She stayed rooted, measured, answering questions when they mattered, turning down interviews when they didn't, and she kept saying the same thing, I asked what the public has the right to ask. That consistency changed everything. Even skeptics began to shift. On WRLX News, one analyst noted, she's not yelling. And that's what makes her dangerous. The calm is the message. Cable segments slowed down, replaying her statements, no theatrics, no shouting, just precision. The ethics committee, once pressured to look away, was now cornered. Over 120,000 signatures had poured into public petitions in 48 hours. 2 Republican committee members, previously opposed to even reviewing her file, suddenly changed course. They'd now review the evidence. Behind the scenes, Jasmine was just as deliberate. That morning, she met privately with Congressman Desmond Clay in a quiet Capitol room. He was seasoned, shrewd, one of the few who knew how long this town could bleed you dry. You're not making friends with this, he said, sipping coffee. I'm not looking for friends, Jasmine replied. I'm looking for answers. Clay chuckled. You sound like me 20 years ago. Did it get you anywhere? He shrugged. Got me here. Which means I lost more than I won. But you didn't fold. No, he said. But I learned something. Staying measured doesn't mean staying still. Make your move, but make it count. People remember who didn't flinch. But they follow the ones who follow through. Jasmine nodded. That's the plan. Outside the Capitol, protesters had gathered. Some waved signs defending Melania Trump. Others called for transparency. Across the board in Tampa, a local station aired a clip of Anthony Giles, a retired Marine. I didn't vote for her, he said of Jasmine, but I respect what she did. We need more people willing to tell the truth without turning it into a circus. The quote went viral. Meanwhile, Melania's team pivoted. They softened. No more legal threats, for now. Instead, they leaned into sympathy, profiles on her charity work, a children's hospital visit, a photo op with veterans. The message was clear: remind people who she is, not where she might have been. But the shift didn't land, because Jasmine hadn't made it personal. She hadn't mocked or vilified. She hadn't accused the First Lady of corruption. She had asked one pointed question: why was she there? And that question refused to die. That afternoon, Jasmine met with her staff. Again. The room's energy had changed. Not frantic or focused. We've got a hearing on the table, one aide said. We'll be called to present next week. Public? Not at first. But pressure's building. They won't be able to keep it closed for long. Jasmine glanced at new polling data. Approval, up 2 points. Especially among younger voters. And working-class women, across party lines. Khalees leaned over her shoulder. They're starting to see it, Jazz. You didn't come to burn the house down. You came to ask who paid for it. That made Jasmine smile. Because it was true. But she also knew momentum was a window. And right now, it was wide open. 3 days later, with the committee's preliminary review officially launched, Jasmine found herself standing alone on a cracked sidewalk in northeast Philadelphia. It was just past noon, warm, not oppressive, outside a small recreation center where she used to volunteer, years before politics and no cameras. No press. Just folding chairs in a circle, and a group of high school girls, some curious, some skeptical. One girl in the front row, maybe 16, raised her hand. Why don't more people do what you did? Jasmine leaned forward, met her eyes. Because it costs you, she said. Every time you tell the truth in a room full of people who benefit from lies, you pay for it. Sometimes with your career. Sometimes with your safety. Always with your peace. The room fell quiet. Then another girl, bold and sharp, asked, so why do it? Jasmine smiled. Small. Real. Because I couldn't sleep knowing I said nothing. And because the people who benefit from silence? They count on it. That evening, she walked alone through a small public park in Oxon Hill. No one stopped her. But a few people nodded as she passed. Like they understood something, like they saw her, and this time, they weren't looking away. It was the same rec center where she'd held her first campaign rally 2 years ago. A few of the same volunteers from that day were back, no formal invitations, no press advisory. Just a handful of people who showed up and started putting chairs in a circle. A makeshift town hall formed, like muscle memory kicking in. A woman approached, middle-aged, holding the hand of her granddaughter. In her other hand was a folded piece of paper. You won't remember me, she began. I came to that first rally you held. I didn't vote for you. I didn't trust politicians. I figured you'd be just like the rest. Jasmine stood quiet, listening. But what you did this week, the woman's voice cracked, her eyes wet. That wasn't about politics. That was about right and wrong. I told my granddaughter, this, as she squeezed the girl's hand. This is what grown-up courage looks like. She handed Jasmine the paper. No name, just a simple handwritten note. Thank you. It meant more than headlines ever could. Meanwhile, the inquiry in D.C. was gaining traction. Whistleblowers had begun quietly stepping forward, junior staffers, event coordinators, even a former Mar-a-Lago employee who claimed to have seen the guest list from that night. Legal analysts argued over the First Lady's level of involvement. But one thing was undeniable: Jasmine's question had kicked open a door. And now, others were walking through it. Still, she never raised her voice on a small but respected podcast based out of Baltimore. She spoke plainly. "I wasn't trying to ruin anyone's image," she said. "I just asked why we've become so comfortable letting power operate unwatched. And if I have to take the heat for asking that, I'll take it. But I won't be quiet." The host asked, "Are you afraid of what might come next?" "Every day," Jasmine said without pause. "But fear doesn't disappear. You just learn to walk through it." Later that week, behind closed doors, she met with two senior members of her party, veterans of Washington, each with over 20 years on the Hill. One of them, quiet and gray-haired, rarely spoke much in public. But that day, he leaned forward and said, "I underestimated you." She blinked. "I'm not sure how to take that." "You took a risk," he continued. "A calculated one. And now they can't ignore you. That's not how this town usually works. But it is how it changes." That line stayed with her longer than most praise ever had. She left the building without a grin, without fanfare, just steady footsteps and a clear mind, because by now, she understood, the truth doesn't need volume to be heard. By the end of the week, the world looked the same. No resignations. No handcuffs. No flashing banners of guilt, but something had shifted, deep beneath the surface, in the way people were paying attention. In the questions they were finally willing to ask Jasmine. Crockett wasn't hailed as a hero. She didn't want to be. What she earned was something rarer: credibility. On Monday morning, she stood on the Capitol steps before a wall of reporters, not to attack, but to reflect. She didn't bring new documents. No grand reveals. Just her voice. This was never about one woman at one table on one night, she said. This is about how proximity to power gets protected, while accountability keeps getting pushed aside. A reporter from a major outlet called out, "Congresswoman, what's the lesson here?" She thought for a moment. Then answered, "Silence is convenient. But it's not harmless. And the title in front of your name doesn't put you above one. Simple question, why were you there?" That afternoon, back in her office, Jasmine finally let herself breathe. Her schedule was cleared: no press, no hearings, no meetings. Just quiet. Khalees brought her lunch and set it on the desk. Said nothing. She knew Jasmine wouldn't eat yet. Instead, Jasmine stood by the window, watching a group of students touring the Capitol, 5th or 6th graders, backpacks too big, laughter echoing. One of them waved, probably not at her, not on purpose. Still, Jasmine waved back, because they were who it was really for. Not the pundits. Not the committee. Not even the First Lady. It was for the people told that telling the truth was too risky. For those taught to shrink their voices to survive. For every little girl told to sit down when something didn't feel right. Jasmine sat at her desk and opened her laptop. Dozens of emails awaited, from watchdog groups, supporters, critics. One was marked White House Liaison. She skipped that one. Instead, she opened an email from a woman in Wisconsin. "I watched the whole segment. I didn't agree with you before. But now I do. Thank you for holding your line." Jasmine replied with one sentence, "Thank you for listening with an open mind." That was the win, not the press coverage. Not the bump in polls, but the pause. The moment when someone, somewhere, stopped and thought, maybe she's right. The formal hearing was still weeks away. The machinery of Washington would churn rebuttals, distractions, crafted denials, but none of it could erase what had already happened, because one person, armed with little more than a folder and a voice, had shifted the conversation. It was never about shaming Melania Trump. It was about reminding everyone that no title, no position, no marriage makes someone immune from being asked, "Why were you there?" Outside, the tour group had moved on. Inside, Jasmine closed her laptop and leaned back. Finally, she allowed herself a small smile, not pride. Just peace, because this job had never been about destruction. It was about revelation, and she had done that. Sometimes, the truth doesn't knock. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand attention. Sometimes, it just walks in quietly and sits at the table.